Hi, welcome back. I'd like to welcome you for our third and last panel for the afternoon. For this one, the panel is going to talk about accelerators and their emphasis on diversity and access. Eric, I'd like to pass it to you so you can kick it off.
Thank you so much. It is indeed a pleasure to have this opportunity to curate this last session. We have a panel of esteemed individuals from across the country that are all going to bring very unique perspectives from their own lens, and then talk about the innovations, opportunities, and resources that are available through their respective organizations. First, we have with us Mr. Ian Johnson, Investment Associate with The Engine. Afternoon, Ian. Next, we have Ms. Veranda Price, Chief Operating Officer, Russell Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. Good afternoon, Veranda.
Thank you, Eric. Good afternoon.
Next, we have with us Grant Warner, CEA Director of Innovation and Associate Professor at the Howard University. Good afternoon, sir. Lastly, we have rounding out the panel, Ms. Monica Wheat, Managing Director with Techstars Equitec. Good afternoon, Monica.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Again, so excited to have the opportunity to help guide this session. And it is indeed a pleasure to have all of you with us. Just as a brief overview, in my work with the National Urban League and the Houston Area Urban League through our Entrepreneurship Center, we have an opportunity to provide small business technical assistance and consultation, helping our clients to build capacity, to provide access to capital and procurement opportunities. One of the topics that is always discussed is innovations and access to resources that might not be traditional for small business owners. And so what I'd like from each of you is really kind of a brief description of your accelerator program and any unique attributes or characteristics that you would like to call out. Gentlemen, I'd like to start with the ladies first. And so, Veranda, we'll go with you, please.
Great. Thank you. Always love to go first.
Yes, ma'am.
So just to let you know a little bit about the Russell Innovation Center for Entrepreneurs here in Atlanta, Georgia. We are roughly a 3-year-old nonprofit. We support roughly 130 Black entrepreneurs. And as we say, we are unapologetically and exclusively focused on Black entrepreneurs. We are part incubator, part accelerator, part co-working, part event space, 53,000 square feet of space located roughly a mile away from the HBU Center of Clark, Atlanta, Morris Brown, Morehouse, and of course, Spelman, and another mile or so from Georgia Tech, Emory, and Georgia State. So we are located right there in the heart of Atlanta academically. And in terms of Black businesses, we are located in Castleberry Hill, which has the largest concentration of Black entrepreneurs in Atlanta. So we come at this both with a personal and a professional mission, because we are here and we see the impact that entrepreneurship has on Black communities, has on economic mobility, and on sustained wealth generation. So if I can point out one thing that makes us different, I will say that because we are a nonprofit and unlike incubators and accelerators, we don't take an investment in our companies at all. There is this implied resource that we do everything that we possibly can to support our Black entrepreneurs to success. The other thing is, frankly, there's no other place like the Russell Center because we are by and for and about Black people in a way that other places cannot yet say. And located here in Atlanta, where we have the largest concentration of corporations headquartered here in Atlanta. I've already mentioned the numerous academia institutions that we have here, including HBCUs. And then I can't let it go because today is picture perfect day here in Atlanta. It's sunny and 70s, so temperate climate and certainly affordability. So all of those really make for a rich ingredient in terms of if you are an entrepreneur and you have a very short runway, you want to get as much as you possibly can out of that. So coming to Atlanta where it's affordable, where people are community-minded, community-based, and supporting and leaning into your success is really something that we embrace here at the Russell Center.
Yes, thank you for that. And I do have a question, but I'll come back to it after the initial introductions. We'll go with you next, Monica.
Thank you. Thank you. Again, I am here today representing my new role at Techstars. I've been with Techstars for over 10 years now in various roles, but Techstars is a global network of accelerators and ecosystem building communities across the world. We have 3 community programs that are in 150 cities worldwide that are free, low cost, open access, and focused on diversity and focused on access and focused on entrepreneurship. Across the board, that is the power of us is our network. Folks who graduate through those programs then can compete for a spot and then be invited to a spot into one of our 47 global accelerators. And they are in multiple countries, especially the United States, and we have a global network of about 19,000 investors and 5,000 mentors. And so I've been a part of the Techstars network specifically because of their mission and their effort of keep trying and keep trying to make ways and spaces for people to have access to entrepreneurship and entrepreneurship education. In particular, I was tapped to lead the Techstars Equitec Accelerator. And it is the first of its kind in the country in our network. And Techstars Equitec is focused on what we call underestimated founders, which are women, people of color, members of the LGBTQ community, and those who are differently abled. In addition to that, we also look at founders from non-diverse backgrounds, but who are building products that are focused and very, very intentional about creating equity and access for all parts of society. And so I'm super, super proud to be leading this program. I literally just left a meeting and onboarding where we're in the midst of choosing and plotting who's going to be in this next accelerator and building a hub of similar ones. They're hoping to be a map for other cities. And I've worked with several of those cities throughout my career. So very happy to be here and very happy to be a part of the conversation.
Yes, outstanding. You know, the introductions are really lending to the questions. You know, Miranda, you talked about all of the academic institutions that are immediately within your geographic area. And then Monica, you talked about more of a global reach. And so this is really exciting as we develop the conversation to talk about assets, again, that are non-traditional, not within our immediate catchment area, but that we can direct entrepreneurs, as you said, being unapologetically Black and focusing in on Black, Indigenous people of color to access resources that are available around the world. Next, we'll go with you, Ian.
All right, thanks for having me, Eric. Yep, Ian Johnston from The Engine. We're an MIT-born VC firm focused on tough tech, really translating technology from the benchtop to commercialization, particularly with a focus on climate change, human health, and advanced systems in ways that will drastically change how the world functions, how we see each other, how communities function. We run a 5-week program as part of our VC firm called Blueprint. And it's really an entrepreneur boot camp. And I would say the unique feature and the diversity of it is really built into how we structured it. We try to welcome founders who are diverse in terms of not only their backgrounds and kind of the BIPOC community, but also where they are in their stages. We have people from their second or third year of PhD who are still just kind of thinking about starting a company, all the way through the people who have started a company, have been on the market. And I think this, and we kind of use that beyond, you know, the Boston region. And I think that's really important to us because I think as we think about diversity, it's important to understand the differences in resources, the differences in networks, the differences in how people have come to become founders. And so when we designed this program, we took very close to heart to say, we are not only going to help those people who know what's going on and where they are, but we're going to help those people figure out how much further do they have to go? What are the questions they have to ask? So during our 5-week program, we go over technology and scaling, market and regulatory, fundraising prep, storytelling. And I think storytelling particularly is important for the BIPOC community because how you tell your story, the way you tell your story and having the heart in that story is important to keep at heart as you kind of build your company because that's how you change all of this. So very happy to be here with everybody.
You know, Ian, that is, you mentioned something about how they tell their story. And we understand that people of color for decades have been subjugated to allowing our story to be told. But at this time, with these opportunities, we have a unique space where we can begin to articulate our own story and to self-identify what we want the world to hear. And of course, entrepreneurship is a key component and mechanism that allows us to do that. So now it's just not about having a rich tapestry of resources in a confined area, as Burundi indicated, then a global reach, connecting resources from all over and creating then, as you said, pathways and building capacity in individuals so that they can be successful, not just in tapping the resources, but utilizing those resources at the highest and best use. Wow, this is exciting. Next, we're going to bring Grant Warner from, again, the Howard University.
That's right. I love when you say it. Yeah,
yes, sir.
All right, thank you. So one of these things is not like the others. So I'm coming to this from a university perspective, but I will say, kind of to frame this. So I'm a coach in, kind of what's described as the nation's largest deep tech accelerator. So very similar to what Ian is calling tough tech, right? Where we take things from lab to market. And ICOR, the NSF Innovation Corps, it's been spun out to multiple federal agencies, is part of that, but it's a pipeline for people to go from idea all the way through seed funding, non-dilutive, right? Funded by the US government. So, I focus on that human capacity development, right, for innovation. And we're focused on researchers. So we're talking about PhD students, postdocs, and faculty. So people who often don't view themselves as entrepreneurs. So on campus, you talk to a faculty member about entrepreneurship, they're more likely to think about an app than they are to think about themselves, right? But I'm coming out, I'm literally coming out of one of our sessions where we have someone who is working on new ways of doing water filtration, right? Developing decision-making systems that impact carbon emissions, kind of in our country. Someone developing therapeutics that repairs heart damage, right? So things that are really what we call deep tech that faculty are best positioned to involve themselves in, right? When we think about these things, deep tech, tough tech, there is a long pathway to market and there is a lot of risk and uncertainty. And faculty are armed with the tools to de-risk really uncertain environments, right? It's called the scientific method. And that's been such a central part of the last decade of entrepreneurship training, right? How do we incorporate the scientific method into the regular cadence of entrepreneurship? But it's happening in a way that faculty members often aren't aware of, right? So, part of what I do in particular is to build on-ramps to that accelerator. So at Howard, we run something called HBCU ICOR, where we reach across the HBCU network and provide the training and pathway to the ICOR program. I'm also one of the founders of Black Tech Ventures, where we do the same thing, focused more on our student population, both graduate and undergraduate across the HBCU network. But we don't exclude those from PWI. So I went to Cornell University, and I understand what it's like to be a Black student on a campus that has a wealth of opportunities that you don't feel like you can access, right? We're here to help them with that also. I also support a program called Enrich, run at Jackson State, again, looking at people who are doing this kind of deep tech related to life sciences. So again, the core part of it is how do we develop additional capacity for innovation across our HBCU network?
Yeah, that is outstanding. And that was a great finish to the introductions, because it really talks about the individual as the key asset to their own enterprise. And one of the things that we are all very aware of is that many entrepreneurs, people of color, do not fully understand and or appreciate all of the resources that are available within the academic environment. And so helping to connect them As I said earlier, whether they are a student or not, the university is a resource to the community. And the more people are aware of the resources and assets, and then creating pathways to tap into that, is really where the magic will begin to happen. And the better they understand that they are their company's greatest asset, then the more successful they can be. So all of us really appreciate the value that our respective programs and institutions bring to the equation. But for the listening audience's edification, let's talk specifically about what some of those value propositions might be from your respective institution and the work that you do within your community. And again, we'll start with you, Brenda.
Great, thank you again. Absolutely. So one of the things that we lean into as Black people in terms of our culture is that community is one of our greatest assets. And because of that, we lean into collaborating with other organizations who are like-minded and who are focused on a similar goal. So we have partnership opportunities with Morehouse Innovation Lab. We are a partner with Clark Atlanta, with Georgia Tech, with ATDC. So all of these are institutions in the Atlanta ecosystem that are focused on entrepreneurship. Here at the Russell Center, we also emphasize and really try to encourage and bringing in the community to everything that we do in terms of exposure, in terms of support, in terms of partnership, in terms of mentorship opportunities, in terms of opportunities to join the Russell Center community. And if I can just give a snippet of a background on why this is so important to us, because Herman J. Russell himself really epitomizes the story and the legacy of entrepreneurship, certainly in Atlanta and maybe in the country. So he started 70 years ago, really as a plasterer. And then if you fast forward 70 years now, he has built sustained wealth for his family, not only for himself and his children, but his children's children and beyond, by branching out into real estate, into construction. He helped to build Atlanta Hartsfield International Airport, the Smithsonian in DC, the Atlanta skyline. He brought sports, organized sports in terms of pro teams to the Atlanta area. So real estate concessions in the airport, where if you come to Atlanta, and I know most of us have, because one way or the other, all roads lead through into Atlanta. If you go to concessions, if you go to Concourse B, you have been to a concession that is owned by the Russell family. So here at the Russell Center, we know our vision can be realized because we've seen it happen through the Russell family. And we do this in partnership with all of the resources that we have available, not only here in the Atlanta area, but we partner with the Morgan Stanley Multicultural Innovation Lab that's in New York. We partner with folks in Birmingham that have innovation centers, because our goal and our objective is really to amplify the work. And there's enough work to go around with this so that there is not only exposure to resources and access to it, but then you can apply that in a way that helps you execute on building your business successfully.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what a beautiful example of a real life legacy of someone that started over 70 years ago, and to see that come to fruition, I mean, real time, walking through a terminal at an airport where that legacy is on full display. You know, Monica, you talked about your network and the global reach. How do you pull the value that each one of those partners and touch points brings and I guess and consolidate it in a way where your program participants can really benefit from something like that?
That's actually a really good question. When you asked the first question and Brenda was being able to be I was like, how do I do the same thing? Because it is a broad, it's a broad ecosystem, and it's a broad network connection. And I would say this is that traditionally the programs that I've been a part of, and especially the ones that I've ran and most of my colleagues have ran, are built around the founders. We are a founder first entity. And by definition, once we seat this upcoming class for Techstars Equitec, one of the first things we're going to do is understand and really deep dive into what each of those companies needs in order to be a successful business, in order to scale. whether that's pure acceleration, whether that's innovation, whether that's revenue, whether that's jobs, whether that's hires, whatever that may be. Each one of those is an individual decision. And that's exactly what makes it a key part of the network. We obviously have several tools and things like that that measure all those kind of things, and we know going in, okay, this company is really focused on DE&I initiatives within the workplace, and they're making this as a product and a tool that can scale. Okay, so who do we know that does e-commerce? Who do we know, who's in the network that we know has very, very big footsteps that they've done within the product space? Who do we know that has a really, really phenomenal understanding of how psychology works, how workplace culture works, how human resources works? And each of those decisions are made based on the people that we see in the class. And so it's just a process of once we know who is in each individual class respectively, then we can go out to the other MDs, we can go out to the broader network. And then in this case in particular, the Equitec vision was first came to fruition from our partner here that's leading or partnering and sponsoring with Techstars Equitec with us, which is Upsurge Baltimore. So it's an ecosystem building group that has a very big vision on what they want to see in this majority. This is a majority Black city like Detroit, which is where I'm from. And this city is the same thing in Baltimore, majority Black city. And they have an idea on how they can change the vision of what it means to have a tech startup city and how they can draw people into that vision and help them build companies from scratch and help them be big enough so that they can hire folks and so that they can be sustainable and so they can grow. And they're just born of their experiences of having 10, 20, 30 years in this space as well. And again, it's a process that all starts with once we have the class seated. Class is seated, then we know who to connect with in the massive, both networks actually.
Right. So really more of a client or customer-centric focus that you then take from that individual assessment and funnel it up rather than funneling it down to the plethora of resources that are available through your global network.
Yeah,
that's
definitely.
Very interesting. And I've got a continuation. I'd like to pose this follow-up to Grant. So Grant, you talked about one of the key components as capacity building for the individual so that they can take full advantage of the opportunity. So as Monica described, you get the class, you get the cohort, you have the individuals kind of in one place. Talk about what your model does to amplify that personal and professional development so that they then can take advantage of the opportunities and resources that might be available.
Yeah, sure. I want to talk about capacity in two ways. So when we think about innovation in the university setting, I mean, there are clear winners and losers, right? So the institutions with really large endowments, they're winners. And those that don't, they struggle. And this is not really an issue of capability, right? It's an issue of capacity, institutional capacity. So part of what we try to do through the programs I mentioned is build shared capacity. So we run our I-Corps program with Hampton, right? We're partnered with them on that program. For the Enrich program, Jackson State leads it, but Howard supports and participates. For Black Tech Ventures, that's something that has spun out of a partnership with UNCF. So this idea of using our assets broadly, right, to align them for capacity building is really critical when we think about the HBCU landscape, right? So in the winners, right, the winning institutions, you might have a tech transfer office that has 30 plus people in it. At an HBCU, you might have one person, right? And it's hard to overcome again those limits of capacity. So we have to think about institutional capacity and individual capacity. But to your question about individual capacity, part of what we try to do again is realign the skill set. So we think there are fundamental assets that faculty members bring to the table. You already have an understanding of this scientific method. What you don't have is the lexicon around entrepreneurship, right? So we try to drive, kind of the understanding of that lexicon. One. Second part is you are an expert in something, and that is both an asset and a liability. So what we try to do is develop that asset to think about ways in which that could be applied, right? What are ways that you might impact real people's lives with your skill set? The liability is you think you already have the answer. So we spent most of the time realigning your expectation that you're right, right? So the most fundamental part is that you have to walk in with the understanding that you could be wrong and accept that. So we spend several weeks. So we run the long course is roughly 2 months. Short course is 3 weeks. Most of that time is realigning people's expectations. Yes, we know you know, but you don't know, right? So why don't you collect evidence and show us that this is true? But at the end, you come out. So we have people all of the time. So I pulled an actual quote. Someone said, "Well, the training is as valuable as the funding, right? Because it opened my mind to new possibilities, right? That's the important part."
Absolutely. That is so outstanding. And, I love the technical terms. So lexicon. So helping an individual to build out not only their vocabulary, but their ability to articulate from their own perspective and the perspective of their enterprise, what their value proposition is, what their product, service, et cetera. And then use that as part of the sales pitch to whomever they might be engaging with. I think the marriage of the technical aspects and then the practical aspects of building entrepreneurs is just really so exciting. So Ian, what again might be a unique value proposition from the engine? You mentioned MIT as a comparison to Grant's description of HBCUs in terms of, everybody has capability, but it's capacity and oftentimes connected to funding. And, you say MIT and immediately huge funding comes to mind.
And that's exactly it. I think as we built our Blueprint program, we realized that there are brilliant people everywhere. There are brilliant people doing work. And to Grant's point, it's about having the access and the routes to get there. And so I think one of the things we've been realizing, we've only done the Blueprint program for a year and a half, 2 years now. And something we quickly realized, you need to change the pipeline. It's not enough to just look for the diverse founders in 1 or 2 institutions. It's about changing the pipeline from connecting undergrads with PIs and helping them get to grad school and understanding how they can leverage their thought process. It's about also really kind of changing VC in a lot of ways. Most times VC is impacted by, coming from the VC side, VC is impacted by, or the new VCs are usually old founders. So it's about teaching the founders about how does diversity come into play and when. And we always really advocate both in Blueprint and even in our portfolio. Diversity needs to be interwoven at the beginning. It's real hard. It's real hard to go suddenly be diverse when you need to go find a CTO or another founder. If you have a diverse network, your inclination, your instinct is to go find other diverse individuals. But even whether you're a BIPOC founder or not, if you have a diverse network already, you can leverage that already. So I think one of the things at our core is one, founders first. 100% love that, Monica. We're all about technical founders, love all about our founders, but also building the networks, building the connections between people. The number of Slack channels that have evolved and founders who found each other through the program just connected and were found PIs. I think that's one of the key things, because it's just it's too, I think there's assumptions built into how people get all the way from being a founder or have an idea to building a company. And I think one of those assumptions is that you just need to work hard. And it's no, there's a lot of people who are involved, those connections that come into play. And I think we being close to MIT and Harvard in this ecosystem, we want to be that conduit. We want to say, hey, we have applicants from Jamaica, we have applicants from Florida, we have applicants from wherever. We're going to say, okay, we have an idea. We'll give you some of the thought process and things from the VC side, but also if we have people, VCs, PIs, et cetera, that'll be interested, let's connect you. Let's build that connection so you can grow that thought process and that network. And even if this isn't the company you end up staying at forever, you have that connection, you've built something more. And so we advocate for that network component entirely.
Ian, you mentioned, of course, DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And right now it's all the buzz. Everybody wants to now diversify. We understand that diversity is not just the difference in ethnicity, but it's also, as you indicated, a diversity of thought, mindset, community, as you said, Brenda, culture, and all of those things that really are assets and attributes of many of the clients we serve. Grant, I'd like for you to start, but what do you find are key characteristics of founders or your small business clients, entrepreneurs, that provide a greater level of success as you engage in that personal and professional development, capacity building process?
Yeah, I think the biggest piece is, again, kind of being open, right? So, really incorporating the growth mindset that I'm not, I'm in a place where I can grow and learn new things. So the ones who tend to fail are those who come in thinking they've already solved the problem. Again, it really comes down, what we call it is evidence-based entrepreneurship, right? As opposed to faith-based entrepreneurship, right? It's not about kind of what you believe. It's not your gut. Like, yeah, that's a good starting point. Now let's collect evidence. And if you're resistant to that, right? The idea that, well, I should go out and actually talk to my customers. The best ideas may be outside of my lab group, right? Outside of my office. If you're resistant to that, you're not going to be successful. Certainly not within our framework, because it runs totally counter to, kind of what it is that we're doing. But I think it's just common sense. The more I talk to people, the more they, at the end, they say, well, yeah, this is all obvious. I may never have thought of it before, but it's all obvious. So I've launched several companies. Generally, for the company, you start with some inkling of a problem, but we've done it. Like, hey, we start with an inkling of a problem, develop a solution, introduce the solution, get ripped apart by a customer, and you're back to square zero. Like, why would you do that, right? Why would you do that? So there's the issue of problem solution fit. Do you understand the customer? Do you understand the problem? People tend to get that, but then there's the whole other part of the business model, right? How are you going to enter the market? How would you sell to people? How do you advertise? What do your partners look like? And what's the exchange with your partner? Again, they assume that it's, hey, once I understand the need, the rest falls into place. No, all of it is part of that experimentation, that evidence collection that you need to build. So again, you got to have that mindset to be open. And if you can't be coached, you're likely going to fail.
Absolutely. I mean, like in life, we all need to be coachable up until the time that it ends. And that is really the beauty and the opportunity for ongoing education and learning. Just before we progress, I would like to, for the edification of our listening audience, if you have any questions, put them in the Q&A, and we'll be addressing those at the close of the session. I'd like to now pivot, Monica. So your program has a global reach. So I can assume that your clients are representative of all of the areas in which the program facilitates services. Talk a bit about the cultural characteristics that you observe and the differences that you might see from area to area, geography, and how that might be more of an asset to their success, and or the characteristics might serve as a deficit that need to be addressed in the program.
No, that's a good one. I think Techstars is like any other big corporation. I think we have work to do. I think we've acknowledged that multiple times, and we would never say that we've perfectly figured out how to perfect inclusion. But I will say that especially in our community programs, which are much broader, they more directly reflect what's going on in the community. The Accelerator programs are a little different because the way that they recruit is that they're recruiting specific people to come into that space and then be accelerated. So it's a little bit different, but the community programs by definition are done, they're built exactly that way. And I think one of the things that we talk about is like, we want leadership. We want the leads for our startup weeks and our startup weekends, which are our community programs. We want that to reflect the makeup of the folks that they're leading. But I think without question, you can go into almost any of the Techstars communities and be welcomed and see folks from the broader ecosystem. And I think for us, I think that's something that I've always been proud of. It's something that I've always seen. And when I've been shipped all around the country to different spaces and places, it's something that I know that I've seen, but it's something that I know we need to work on the accelerator side. And it's something that exactly what Equitec is kind of built to say, like, people don't think automatically when they think of tech startups, they do not think those founders are going to be Black and brown and look like this panel. They honestly don't think that. And a lot of this business is based on relationships. And a lot of this is based on, you know, as they say, the pattern. It's based on this pattern of what they think will be an investable company that will scale. And I think that's something that we've been really, really open to and really thoughtful about, of like, how do we affect change? How do we make sure that we're recruiting? How do we make sure that we're encouraging these founders? And we have all these different programs and funds and things like that that are meant to figure out how do we get more of people who are diverse and look like that individual community into the accelerators? How do we get them into the pre-accelerators? How do we get them into funding cycles? And just being relentless in that quest, I think, is something that we've been really intentional about.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I must say, thank you all so much. I am just loving this, the opportunity for us to have this discussion in such an authentic and transparent way, and not to feel encumbered by the focus on BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, people of color. For such a time as this, you know, we can do so unapologetically. But and someone said earlier, but it's all about the client and being able to ensure that our communities not only have access, but understanding, not just the capability, but the capacity to participate in this huge entrepreneurship ecosystem that we have right in front of us. So again, thank you so much. I am just super excited to facilitate. Veranda, we're gonna pivot to you real quickly. You know, when people talk about Atlanta, you know, you hear about the Mecca, and certainly we respect that, and we bow down as necessary. We do understand where some of this ignited. Yes, ma'am. And so, talk a bit about what you see in your market as you know. How have people taken advantage of a robust market and the environment to build their personal characteristics to then participate in the opportunities that are immediately available to them?
Yeah, and thank you for basically saying, Eric, that all things come to Atlanta because, as we say here, Atlanta influences everything. I'm going to rep my city, Atlanta. You can tell, native born Atlantan, very proud of it. I will say that, Eric, when you mentioned MIT and money, it triggered me because I graduated from MIT and I was thinking bursar instead of the money that you were talking about. So it just triggered me. But to answer your question about Atlanta and why it is seen as the Mecca for Black folks, it's because we have a long and storied history that goes beyond entrepreneurship. You can look at any facet, if it's music, if it's civil rights, if it's politics, and we all know Atlanta and Georgia came through this year. So I'm putting that out there and saying that. So Atlanta really it's multifaceted. It's one of those unique places that we have diversity just kind of inborn, ingrained, and we have experience with working together in that environment. Monica was talking about, Techstars and diversity. Before I came to the Russell Center, I was the managing director for Comcast NBC Universal's Accelerator, Tech Accelerator called The Farm. Mm-hmm. And I will proudly say, though we were not demographically focused, we had 50% founders of color in this tech startup, in our Tech Accelerator, and we had roughly 20% women. And when people ask me, how did you do that? I look them straight in the face and I say, look at me. Seriously, founders were looking at me. And one of the things that they were doing was making an assessment and saying, okay, if this place has a managing director that looks like me, it's going to make it that much easier for me. She's going to understand maybe some of the complications and complexities of being a founder, so that I won't have to explain that to anybody else. That makes a difference. The visual makes a difference. So yes, where you go to recruit, going to Black Wall Street in North Carolina, being here in the epicenter of HBCUs in Atlanta, absolutely that makes a difference. What also makes a difference is who's in charge and who's leading the way. Who are you seeing around the table and in the room? And I tell people that all the time. I can't tell you how many people have told me they came to the farm and I was the inaugural managing director. So I was launching and leading it and growing and developing it. And they would say, I came here because of Brenda, not Brenda, the person, but because she's a Black woman, that Brenda. And that's something that you cannot, you can't ignore the power and the possibility of that. And I think back to your question, Eric, this is why Atlanta is seen as the Black Mecca, because look at the visual that is there. Everything from, you know, Stacey Abrams to our mayor of the city of Atlanta, to look at the music scene here, look at the film scene, look at what's happening in fintech and health tech and so on here, sports tech. If you look at that, people say, wow, that's a place of opportunity and possibility and accessibility for people like me. And there are few other places that can say it in such a compelling way that we have that narrative that we have lived in, built on, and understand and leverage.
Absolutely. And then what's that young man's name? I believe it, Tyler Perry. Okay, yes.
Oh yeah, just that one. Uh-huh.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So we've got about 10 minutes, and then we're going to open it up for Q&A. And Ian, certainly not to cut you short, but certainly want to hear from you, you know, what you have seen in the characteristics of the individuals that participate in your program. And, you know, having visited Boston, there's a very interesting dynamic and the demarcation that exists within the city. And so, you know, it's really a privilege to see you leading this opportunity connected to MIT. So talk a bit about that as well.
Yeah, and I would say with founders, I think the things that I've seen, particularly from the Black founders that have been successful, the hurdles they've run into are kind of two key things. One is, if anyone here's read The Art of War, there's phrase, know yourself, know your enemy, and fear not the result of 1,000 battles kind of thing. So know who you are, know what you're good at, know what you're not good at, and fill those gaps. And I think the founders who've done really well know that, are good with that. They know, I'm very good, I'm very technically sound, I need someone who can tell stories, I need someone who does this. And it's to Grant's point of like being able to be coached, you need to be self-aware of where your flaws are, to have the pride to hold up your technological background, but also have the humbleness to understand where you're lacking. And so knowing yourself is incredibly important. The other side of that phrasing, knowing your enemy, but really your opponent, that speaks to the market very much to what Grant was speaking, but also when you go to raise capital, like know what VCs you're talking to, know what programs you're applying for. There's VCs who write big checks and small checks, work in one space or another. Knowing your opponent and understanding what the story, the angle, the strategy you need to walk into the door with, that background knowledge I think is like by far one of the most important components to it all, because in the mind of VCs and everywhere, there's a risk versus greed side. If you can show me why you are the person and you've done your homework and this is going to go forward, it starts pushing away a lot of those other discriminatory prejudice sides when you see dollar signs. So it's like understanding and doing homework gives you power in that situation. The other thing I would say is I've had quite a few BIPOC founders ask me, how do you get around asking for $1 million, $2 million? Like, how do you get like the heart to say that? And I've had to tell them, like, you need to have the audacity to do that, because there's people who don't look like you who are happy to ask for it without blinking, without batting an eye, without.
Absolutely.
And so you need to be okay that when you walk in the room, you've done your homework, that I'm asking for $1.5 million, I'm asking for $10 million, I'm asking for $100 million because I know that's what I need and I'm gonna get it there. And like having that confidence, trusting in that brand, you've built yourself over the last 15 to 20 years, whatever, to be who you are. You're not there by mistake. It's not like some crazy series of events. You're there for a reason. So like trusting in that and having the audacity to say, I need this to do A, B, and C, and I'm going to do it for you. So like, I think those two qualities, knowing yourself, knowing your enemy, and like really having the audacity to believe in yourself and trust in that brand are just like absolutely crucial for success going forward.
Absolutely. You know, we facilitate a program in our education department, and the component is called ID. And it is all around identification and getting the participant's voice on record. And Grant, something you said earlier, really about building that personal capacity and capability just speaks. So, the intersection of those two is just material, and for our clients and our people, having, you say audacity, but if you know who you are, and then as Grant says, you can substantiate it by evidence-based proposals or requests, then ask for it. I am a salesman who have found myself working in a nonprofit space, but I am not a social worker. I am a salesman. I sell every day, whether it's to the funder that funds my program or the client that is receiving services because of that. And that is really part of the entrepreneurial DNA, the ability to sell, but it's based on a confidence in knowing that the request or the ask is coming from a place that you can defend and support without question. We're running up into about maybe 8 minutes until the end of the session. I don't see a lot of Q&A. So, as they say, one of two things has occurred. Either we are doing an outstanding job in our presentation and answering questions as we go through the dialogue, or we're doing a poor job in the session. I would defer that we are doing an outstanding job and would like to again congratulate and commend each of you for the contributions thus far. Lastly, we've got a couple of minutes, so let's put a face on some of the clients that we've been talking about. Any success stories or anything that we'd like to share, real quickly.
Okay, I'm going to jump in here because I will brag on my companies all day long. We have a number of success stories that I want to share. We have a company called Aquagenuity that is focused on having the ability to determine whether or not water supply is safe. And it came out of that entire Detroit, Michigan tainted water situation a few years ago. And I'm particularly excited about it, not because of the application here domestically, but because of the global application of that in terms of the implication for places that don't have a quick and easy test to do that. That's homegrown, home-based, right here in Atlanta, right here in our backyard, that someone came up with that idea of doing that. We have a company called We Buy Black, which is the largest e-commerce platform of Black produced products in the country. So it's the Amazon, the Black Amazon. So you can buy anything there from paper towels to, culturally significant, products as well. But, we all use paper towels and paper products and plastic bags and all of those things. And so being able to support Black producers of those products is one way to not only create billionaires and build that generational wealth building, but continue to circulate that dollar in the Black community. So those kinds of things are not one-offs either. I could go on with a list of companies that are doing extremely well. I will give my fellow panelists a chance to jump in here and add their own, but believe me, I don't want people to leave from here thinking that these are unicorns in the sense that they're scarce. Because they're ones that we come across and deal with every day.
Yeah, thank you. Just a couple of things. There's been a request. If each of you would take a moment and put your contact information into the chat, then all of our program or the listening audience can follow up with you directly. Right now, we've got over 100 people that have been engaging in this dialogue, and hopefully it has been a tremendous value. Some of the specific questions that I'll go through is, one was on the topic of Atlanta. Would you recommend someone moving from Texas to head to Atlanta or to Chicago? I would defer that you take advantage of all of the immense opportunities in the great state of Texas, and then branch out with your arteries to benefit from the opportunity for expansion in your enterprise. I just thought I'd get that one out of the way. Another question, is software technology, EdTech, an area of focus or interest for any of the panelists? Does the company need to be a part of your local community, I guess, in order to engage in the resources? Anyone can take that one.
So I have an ed tech background. So again, if somebody connects with me on LinkedIn, we can kind of take it there. But we do support entrepreneurs from across the country. Primary focus on HBCUs, but we're expanded beyond that. So definitely happy to engage, support, learn more.
Okay. There's another one. It says, from within a university environment, how would you sell the idea of an accelerator to that university? And what mechanisms would you place in the design of the accelerator to guarantee diverse participation in the startup?
So I'm at a university. So, again, not understanding exactly where that person sits in the ecosystem. My suggestion would be not to wait for top-down buy-in. So if there's a community of the like-minded and willing who want to get together, I think you start there. The university will get on board with their success, but trying to convince top-level administrators to stand up a program is a long, arduous task. So I would go for results over that part of it.
Absolutely. Okay. So a question from a viewer in Houston. How do universities, the National Urban League, and accelerators work together to scale support for Black entrepreneurship? Okay, I guess I can take that one. Well, certainly the National Urban League, as the umbrella and convening organization, has a network of entrepreneurship centers across the country. There are 12. In each market, we have relationships with our universities and other academic institutions, as well as peer organizations to support the clients that we serve. You can contact the Entrepreneurship Center in your respective market and or go to the National Urban League website. There's a drop down for the ECs, and then contact someone that might be able to assist in that regard. I think we are running at time. It's 2:54. They could have certainly given us several hours more, and we could have peeled back a lot more in this discussion. But again, Veranda, Monica, Ian, Grant, thank you so much for allowing me the privilege and the pleasure to curate this session. This has been just an outstanding opportunity for me to make your introductions. I will be in contact with each of you because I need to, Brother Grant, I need to make sure that my lexicon is built out in full capacity. Ian, I need to make sure my engine is revved up. Veranda, all things leading to Atlanta, I need to take full opportunity as I build out and expand, Monica, my enterprise globally. So with that, again, thank you so much. Again, it has been our privilege to contribute to the Empire Conference.